everybody, into our show, Retirement Compass Radio Show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems. And I do have Tim Kulhanek in the Lincoln office, although they do have offices in Kearney, Grand Island, Lincoln, and Omaha. So we are so happy to have you listening. Well, because it's hopefully a little bit of entertainment in addition to your information for your retirement years. And so what are we going to do on our financial field? First and foremost, because every yard matters. Is that how we consider, like, every dollar matters, Mr. Kulhanek?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay.
I would say, there's a lot that can happen in the middle of the field, and sometimes you get those, like, typical Big Ten games where it's just like, well, back out there for another punt, and it's just you're punting to one another.
Yes.
Can't get it past, the 50-yard line. But then finally you have a breakthrough and, you get a good series going, you get some momentum. It seems like if it's Nebraska, they run the ball and all of a sudden they start running the ball well and then they'll throw 3 straight times and, have to miss a field goal or something. But when you get down to like the 20-yard line, right, that's what we consider the red zone. And that's where it's just so critical to come away with points. And, there's a lot of statistics that people will look at in the football world and say, okay, one, what's our red zone efficiency? So how often do we come away with points? And more importantly, how often do we score touchdowns? I want touchdowns, not field goals. And on the other side of the coin is like, oh, and by the way, how many times do I not only not come away with points, but how many times do I turn it over? Do I fumble the ball? And, I think back to Nebraska's last game, and it was rough. It was just brutal against Iowa. They absolutely waffle stomped us. And I was at the game. It was freezing cold. I left really early because I was like, well, I'm freezing, and this is miserable in every conceivable fashion. But towards the end of the game, we finally got it down to like their 1-yard line, and we fumbled. And they got it back. They took the ball away. It was just like comedy errors. It was kind of a representation of how the entire day went. But when it comes to your retirement plan, there is a financial red zone, right? And sometimes you say it's like 5 to 7 or 5 to 10 years on really either side of retirement, and that's the most critical time to make good decisions. To not let your emotions or some type of knee-jerk type of decision overcome sound judgment and reasoning. Because one mistake, it's just kind of like you could use any analogy you want to, but there's just a lot more threats that you have to face as you come in to retirement, enter that red zone, a lot more things that can go wrong. The field is compressed, right? Just like, especially in the pros, not so much in the college game, I've noticed, but in the pros, it's almost like when it's first and goal from the 2, depending on the team, sometimes that's more difficult. If they're a passing team and they don't have like a bruiser running back and they don't have Jalen Hurts to do the tush push with, which, by the way, isn't working near as well this year as it has in the past. Teams have started to finally figure out how to defend it. But sometimes that's a little bit more difficult because if you drop back to pass, you don't have as much room to work with. Your receivers, the defense has a condensed area that they have to defend against. And so it's kind of the same thing in retirement where you don't have as much room to work with. There's not as much room for error in the retirement red zone. So we have to make sure we make good decisions. We can't shoot from the hip. We have to make wise, educated decisions once we enter this phase.
Okay, now this is the reason to get on the phone and get an appointment with Stonebridge, for heaven's sakes. 866-295-5146. Time is compressing anyway, let alone the financial red zone, I feel like. Here it is, 2026. Tim, who are we? 866-295-5146. I bet when you started your family, you thought, 2026, 2027, 2028, et cetera, was going to be a long time in the future, and here we are.
Well, I mean...
What year did you get married?
2018.
See?
Yeah.
And here we are 8 years later.
8 years later, March 31st. It's coming up.
It is. We got through COVID. We got through 3 kids, right?
My first child was born during that COVID insanity. And I still remember the hospital. Like, there's nobody there. You couldn't have any visitors.
Oh.
When we drove to the hospital the night my wife's water broke, there's nobody on the street. It was like 10 o'clock because there was a curfew or whatever, or something like that. Everyone was on lockdown. It was a crazy time. And, the thing of it is a lot has changed. It feels like since then, a lot of the public perception of how things work has changed. The one thing that hasn't changed is like the reality that the stock market doesn't really care what your, personal circumstances are. Stock market is going to stock market. And so when people, don't change or adjust their strategy or make tweaks as they enter that retirement red zone I was talking about, and they keep acting like they're on the 50-yard line and there's, 3 quarters left in the game and they're chucking it across the middle, or worse yet, they're scrambling and they run to the sideline and then they try to throw it back across the middle. We all know that's like the worst thing a quarterback can do. But when you're making those decisions, it rarely works out well. Now, sometimes people are like, oh, like he's a magician, Mahomes or something like that pulls some of that stuff off. But for the vast majority of professionals, those types of, heroics and kind of Houdini type things don't work out. And so I'm actually going to shift or pivot just for a second because
Please.
Like what's coming up here in a couple of weeks is the Waste Management Open, right?
That's
you
right.
know what that is?
It used to be called something else.
It's golf, right?
Oh, it's the Phoenix Open.
Yeah, sure. Yep, down there. And, it's a really popular thing. It's kind of the kickoff to golf season.
Yeah.
And then here in a few months, we'll have, the Masters and all those types of fun things. Kind of feels like, okay, now it's spring. But let's say you're playing golf and let's say, it's one of those guys, the pros in the Waste Management Open. And maybe it's easier to compare this to like Augusta where they got the pine straw and stuff. But let's say you have a bad shot and you're not out of bounds, but you are in the trees, maybe, or the pine straw, that sort of thing. And
in the desert, in the rocks.
In the desert or rocks if you're in Phoenix, yeah. And, you're trying to look up, line up your next shot. You're trying to figure out what do I do here. And you have two choices, let's say. You can either hit it back into the fairway, lay up, so to speak, live to play another hole, live to play another, shot, and try to like make more of a meaningful, dialed in, strategic approach to the green out of the fairway. Or you can say, you know what, you only live once. I'm going for it. I'm going to try to recover from this bad shot, and I'm gonna aim straight for the green. In between you and the green is a whole bunch of other bad things that can happen, right? Well, that's where we had this conversation. We say, well, what is a bogey? Well, a bogey is 1 over par. Okay. Well, what for a pro? What is a double bogey for the most part? Some people would say, well, it's 2 over par, and the counter response to that would be like, no. A double bogey is a bad shot followed by a really stupid shot, right?
Okay.
And so in my analogy, sometimes in life when it comes to our financial game plan, we make a bad shot. We make a bad decision. We put too much money into a stock or some fund that was way up and we're trying to chase big returns. We make a decision that we knew it was emotional based off of, wanting, I don't want to say the word greed has such a negative connotation, but like that's the two things that tend to drive the market is fear or greed. Or maybe we sold at the wrong time. We sold after the market lost a bunch of money and then we sat in cash for 2 or 3 or 4 years. It doesn't have to be what defines your game plan, whether it's football, golf, or the game of financial life. There is a recovery strategy that you can implement. There's things you can do to get back on the right track, get back in the fairway, right? Get back in the game. Make up for the mistake you made if you fumbled in the red zone. Play good defense and get the ball back, and there's still a chance that you can win. But most people, when they make a mistake, they double down, right? And then they compound that error with bigger errors, and then it's really a deeper hole and more challenging hole to dig out of. And Jackie, have you ever heard the rule? Like, what's the first rule of holes?
I don't know.
You don't know what the first rule of holes is?
No.
If you're in one, stop digging.
Right?
Right?
Stop! Don't make it worse by digging more.
Right.
Okay.
So again, the message to folks that are listening is maybe that's you. Maybe it's resonating with you. You're like, well, I don't think I'll ever be able to retire. Or I'm worried that my money won't last as long as I need it to. Or, Tim, I sold after the market dropped in 2022 and I've been in cash ever since. And so, how will I ever, recover from this? those are things that we run into on a regular basis. Our team of experienced advisors, they're seasoned. They understand how to navigate the complexities of the market and to make sure that we're designing a comprehensive, balanced approach to retirement that's comfortable for your unique financial situation. That's why we do this show, is to get that message out that, like, hey, there's still a chance for you.
Love it.
If you think you've made errors in the past, let's not compound those. Let's, play the cards we're dealt and make the most. What did I say last time? Lemonade out of lemons.
Yes.
Right? So, or we'll make lemons out of lemonade if your name is Jessa. So that was my, I guess story to the folks listening is why not give us a call and let's see where you're at.
Works for me. 866-295-5146. 866-295-5146. Brought to you by Stonebridge Wealth Systems. This is Retirement Compass Radio Show.
Is your retirement being eaten up by financial termites like hidden fees, inflation, and avoidable taxes? Call today for a complimentary financial review so we can help you root out these retirement killers.
Tim, when the football has been fumbled and the football bounces, it goes boing, and then now it's on its head, now it's on its side, and everybody's trying to land on top of the football so that the other team doesn't come by and pick it up and then run it down to their goalpost. Isn't that the worst moment ever? That's kind of like the rule of holes, isn't it? Just fall your whole body onto the gosh darn ball so it doesn't get swiped.
Yeah, so Green Bay and the Bears were playing not only in the playoffs, but also towards the end of the season they were playing, and Green Bay was up by 2 scores, and there was like a minute and a half left or a minute and 50 seconds left, and the Bears, they scored, but they still had to score again, and they were out of timeouts, so there was little hope for them, and they had just decided to kick a field goal, and Cairo Santos hit this like 50-some yarder. But they're like, we got to score twice anyway, right? So they had to score again to try to win the game. And I think they were down. I can't remember how much. Maybe it was still down by like 5 or something. It was some weird number. Anyways, they had an onside kick, and the announcer said there's a 1 out of 12 chance that they'll roughly 1 out of 12 onside kicks this year in the NFL have been recovered. Not great odds. And they kicked it right to a guy for the Packers who's a wide receiver. He's got good hands, right? And what did you say? What sound does it make?
What, the ball?
Yeah.
Broing,
I think is what you said.
Oh, yeah. Broing, ding,
yes,
dong.
Yeah.
There it goes.
Yeah, it did that. Hit him in the hands. And did you think he fell on top of it? It was like a magician was controlling the ball. And couldn't handle it. Bears get on top of it. Caleb Williams, painted nails and all, comes out and throws a bomb to their top wide receiver, and they win the game. They win the game. And I think they tied it. They ended up tying it or something, and then they won it in overtime, I think. But the point is, like, sometimes the ball takes a weird bounce, and when it comes to your investments, there's this old saying by Jack Bogle, and essentially what he was driving at is he's intimating that for most people in most aspects or phases of life, in order to improve your situation, you have to do something, right? So if you want to be in better shape, you got to exercise, lose weight, maybe eat a healthier diet in addition to the exercise. If you want to improve your eyesight, I was always told to eat carrots. If you want to make more money, then you maybe have to work and take on an extra work or go back to school and get an additional education. There's something that has to be done.
Right.
When it comes to your investments, and this is really, I think, important to have this kind of context in mind heading into 2026 that we're in now, and it being a midterm election year, knowing that there's more volatility on average, lower returns on average in midterm years. That's not a prediction for this year whatsoever. It's just a historical, recognizing historical precedent.
Okay.
He says, when it comes to your money and your investments, when the market's going crazy, don't do something. Okay? Don't do anything. Just stand there. And I think it's important for folks to understand the number one reason why folks underperform long term is because they make poor decisions at poor times.
Wow.
And so when we did our breakfast review here recently, Jackie, we do a semi-annual breakfast review. So we invite all of our Lincoln, Omaha clients.
Nice.
We had, I think, probably 60 or 70 people there. It was at Wilderness Ridge the other morning. And I went through kind of a review of how the market had performed over the last year.
Nice.
And maybe in the next segment I can touch on some of the points. But,
Please.
One of the things that I looked at is if you look at the, relationship between like consumer sentiment. So consumer sentiment, according to the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey, is extremely low. Okay. It was around 50 here recently. And that's bad, right?
Yeah.
Because when it's high, it's like in the 80s. So I actually found the slide. Here's what's interesting. If you look at U.S. stock performance, and right now it's at 54, so it's up slightly, right? U.S. stock performance following positive and negative sentiment periods. So what are the 12-month returns, so subsequent 12-month returns when you're in these different ranges of sentiment score? So sentiment score, if it's in the 50s, on average, the next 12 months for the S&P 500 is around 18%. If you look at the 60s, it's 17.8. If you look when it's in the 80s, it's 11.3, 90s, 13.7, and 100s, it's 11.7. So it's still good because this is going back to 1978, and the average is 12.4%. But what's I think interesting is the lower the score, the more pessimistic the American consumer is, the better the market tends to be in the period that follows.
Okay.
We call that a contrarian indicator. It's the same thing with investor sentiment. So when investors are really optimistic, it tends to be a warning sign that the market's probably ripe for pullback. When they're very, very pessimistic, they're overly pessimistic, they usually get into a oversold type of behavior where they hit the panic button. It usually means that the market is probably headed for higher numbers and additional gains. And so I think these are the type of things that we have to consider, especially in this retirement red zone, is blocking out the noise, because in a year like this, there's going to be a lot of noise. Right now, we've got, speaking of the consumer sentiment, according to the Consumer Sentiment Survey in October of 2025, Democrat consumer sentiment or consumer confidence, only 36% of Democrats were confident in the economy, whereas 97% of Republicans were confident in the economy. But the delta between the two is what's really extreme, is it's massive. There's a 61-point delta between the two. That's some of the biggest we've seen in history. And it flips back and forth. So in other words, if you go back to 2012, and you had a Democrat administration, Republicans were more pessimistic. 2021, you had Republicans, it was a 51-point delta. So it flips back and forth depending on who's in power. My message is just don't let your emotions or your political affiliation cloud your judgment at what comes to your investments, because the market really doesn't care near as much as you do about who is in the White House, Senate. It just doesn't. It tends to go up regardless. And if you choose when to invest based off of a color, right, red or blue, you're going to drastically, woefully, horrifically underperform the market over time, and it's going to cost you dearly. So that's something I think, again, going into a midterm election year where you're going to have a lot of noise in the months ahead, do your best to block that out. You're going to have a lot higher chance of being successful.
Fantastic. Here's Tim's number, Jeff's number too. Jeff is just not present, 877-295-5146. 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. All right, Mr. Kulhanek, is a written plan then with you, Stonebridge?
Yeah.
Our championship ring?
The champ is here. You're supposed to be
like all the fingers,
rings,
yes.
not tattoos.
No.
Like regrets or something like that, or regrets. Yeah, I mean, is it the championship ring?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's remember the movie The Water Boy?
Yes.
You remember what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Right? Adam Sandler, Harry Winkler, Henry Winkler. right?
Yep.
Harry or Henry? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he was the coach, Mr. Coach Klein, and he had this book, but the book got taken by, the mean, evil coach on their side. So he lost all of his confidence, and he didn't have any plays. He could, and they just lost all their games. And then all of a sudden, when he got his confidence back and he could remember like what plays, and all of a sudden he came up with, he got back into his true, his self-realization of who he could truly be. All of a sudden they won the Bourbon Bowl. Okay. Remember the Bourbon Bowl back then? My point in that is
that's cute. Good
what
memory.
the written income plan is. It's that magic playbook, right?
Okay.
I shouldn't say magic. It's not magic, but it's the playbook that gives you the confidence, because what it does, like our process is called the retirement compass. It's just an analysis of the 5 key areas of planning. What it does is it looks at all of them and figures out what you're doing right, what you need to continue to do, and maybe some things that you could tweak to improve your situation. But it also mathematically tests each of those areas, kind of like a stress test. So it says, okay, well, what if in 2033 Social Security got cut by 22%? Would you still be okay? What if
Heaven forbid.
Yeah, right. What if 8 years from now these permanent tax rates revert back to where they were in 2017? Or worse yet, what if they went even higher than that? Would you still be okay?
Oh boy.
What if the market dropped by 20% right out of the gates? You retire and boom, it drops 20%. Would you still be okay?
Oh wow.
But here's what it means. Like, what it means is because you had a playbook, because you had something that is a proven process that you can stick to and revert back to, and like that's your backstop. You're like, no. I know, yes, there's a lot of noise going on. Yes, there's a lot of the markets bouncing around, and I'm hearing all these things about, maybe, there could be a bear market developing here, or, hey, we're into correction territory, or, what if there's an economic, recession or something like that? Oh, my plan's been tested for literally all of those things. Every single one of them. We've addressed each of those scenarios. And what that means is I can actually tune that information out. I can listen to it, but I'm not going to let it impact my good judgment and my decision making, because I'll know that my plan's been mathematically tested and it's designed to work in all those different potential scenarios and environments. That's really what the written income plan does. That's why I say it's the playbook. Look at, again, talking about football, look at Indiana, look at Coach Sig. Like, he's got a formula. He knows it works. Google him, okay? Google him.
Okay. More importantly, use this number to call Tim.
Google me.
Google Tim
me.
Kulhanek.
Okay.
Because nobody can spell it except me. 866-295-5146. It took me a while. 866-295-5146. There's only one vowel missing from your name. 866-295-5146. All right, 2 vowels. Anyway, we'll be right back on the show. Retirement Compass Radio Show.
As Americans, we strive for better. From a better house to a better career to a better life for our children and grandchildren. Better has become the American way. When it comes to your retirement, what does better mean to you? Does it mean more income, a flexible lifestyle, better solutions? A better retirement begins with a financial plan. To get your complimentary written financial plan, call the number you see here. You only retire once. This is your opportunity to plan for better.
Hey, welcome back to the show, Retirement Compass Radio Show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems. And whether you have calves or not, or let's see, you could be relaxing at this time of the year, or you could be calving. So you could be very busy. It just depends. Now, I feel like, Tim, you guys in the financial world, you're always calving. Because you have clients before the tax season, after tax season. You're always busy. Every season of the year is busy for financial planning. Right?
It can be like right now. Let's talk about that because calving. I think have you ever been to like on a cruise to Alaska and they see the glaciers like fall into the water? Isn't that calving? Isn't that calving
No,
too?
not that.
I mean, it has different meanings.
It does.
So we're not falling apart into the icy, frigid North Pacific. But what we're doing this time of year for this was something I was working on is We set up a lot of retirement plans for our farm clients, for our ag clients, whether it's a 401k. Sometimes it's a 401k combo plan. So it might have a 401k plus profit sharing plus a cash balance component, which is a separate plan. Technically, it's called the defined benefit cash balance plan. And then we take it even a step further. We do a 401k with a profit share with a cash balance component combo plan, plus the plan document allows for what we call after-tax contributions, so we can do mega backdoor Roth contributions, which means for last year we could do up to $70,000 in tax-advantaged contributions, plus what the cash balance plan allows us to do. So we're getting census data put together. We're aggregating all of the information for all the statements for 2025, calculating how much we can do as far as like a profit share, which is going to be a component of what your gross compensation was, the compensation that qualifies for that. So a lot of people listening to this, just so you know, like if you're a sole proprietor, it's a different calculation than if you're like a S corporation, because if you're an S corporation or an LLC that files an S corporation, then it's just your W-2 income. If you're sole proprietor, well, then it's a little bit different. We're looking at your net profit, and the percentage that you can put in for profit share is different. It's like 20% of your net profit versus 25% of your gross compensation. So there's different ways that we can structure this. But depending on somebody's income, it might make sense to file as an S corp, like an LLC, have an LLC filing as an S corp, because you could save some FICA tax. But this time of year, we're getting that census data put together. We're aggregating all the statements, getting that sent to our TPA record keeper partners, who are then going to come back and tell us, okay, well, here's the profit share that you can do for the year, and here's how much you can put in your cash balance plan. So let me just say real quick why that's important, and if you're not doing this, it would be a reason you'd want to give us a call. Is I know where grain prices are at. I know that they're not great, right? And so a lot of people are like holding back, and I don't want to buy a bunch of equipment. I don't got the cash flow. I don't know what things are going to look like tomorrow. But like, let's say you have a situation where, you know, maybe you got hailed out a year ago, and you happen to have, you know, a double income year where you didn't defer any grain, so you sold your grain, plus you got a bunch of, you know, insurance payments or something like that, and you're looking at your tax, you know, situation. You're like, I'm going to get absolutely clobbered still on taxes because of all this income hitting in one year. That's why it makes sense to consider setting something like this up, because if you're using, you know, scale as a tax strategy, in other words, you're just renting more ground, so you have more expenses, so you have more prepay, but you're not really, your net profit, your profit margin is not great with where grain prices are at. Maybe there's a better way, especially if you're trying to retire in the next few years. Like,
oh boy,
how do I wind down from farming these additional 1,000, 1,200, 900 acres to where maybe I'm just farming the home place, but I don't feel like I'm paying through the nose in taxes? There's other plans that can be set up, and rather than it being in, you know, 200,000 bushel storage grain bins on your property, which is great to have while you're operating, well, what if there's not, you know, somebody who's going to step in and use all of that? I mean, you can rent it, and that's, again, it's great to have, but you can't take a distribution from that. You can't say, okay, I'm going to sell $25,000 for the vacation I want to take of my equipment. It doesn't quite work that way. Plus, if you depreciated everything out, you're going to get hit with depreciation recapture, which is going to be taxed as ordinary income anyway. And so that's why these plans exist. It can provide flexibility, and that's what you need as you head into retirement, that retirement red zone. You need flexibility. We can give that to you. Starts with a phone call.
866-295-5146, 866-295-5146.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter. The one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
It is a weird subject to talk about your own mortality, but we're here to help you plan for it financially, if not emotionally and financially, on Retirement Compass Radio Show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems, because that is one of the points on the compass, isn't it? To make sure that you get your legacy handled, and also to protect you in case you have a long-term care event. Oh boy, Tim Kulhanek, this can be super important. Do you want to start with estate planning, or do you want to start with protecting yourself? Okay, all right. So why is estate planning so essential, especially right now?
Especially right now. So I'm putting together a class on estate planning. And so
cool.
Let's just say, define an estate plan, okay? And here's what I got. And again, this is my version of it. So don't take this as, Tim Kulhanek said. Well, yeah, that's what I say. But if I wanted to simplify it in like a few sentences, I'd say estate planning is a combination of decisions and documents that outline your wishes if you are either incapacitated or how you want your assets distributed after death. That's what it is, right? And like there's kind of three phases of estate planning when it comes to your life. There's phase one, which is you're alive and you have full autonomy and capacity to make decisions for yourself without the substantial assistance from another person.
Okay.
And so you still need to have an estate plan in place in the event that something happened to you. I talked to a young couple the other day, and they're 34 and 32. I said, do you have a will or any estate documents in place? They said no. I said, do you have any kids? They said, yes, we have 3, 7, 5, and 2.
Wow.
I said, you need to have an estate plan in place because if you don't, like if something happened to you guys, which is, again, nobody likes to think about that ever. I don't like thinking about it, but you have to be realistic that like things happen. Who would be the guardian for your children? And the reality is if you don't make that decision, then a court will. And somebody can petition, and like what are you going to have mother-in-laws fighting with one another over who should be, in charge? It sounds ridiculous, but like, things could happen.
Things do happen, yeah.
And they do happen. So while you're alive and healthy, make those decisions so that way you decide and the court doesn't. 2 is while you're alive, but you don't have full autonomy and capacity. You are incapacitated in some sense. It could be a cognitive impairment. Okay. It could just be a physical impairment or disability that you're no longer safe to navigate your
or both.
It could be both, right?
Yes.
Right. And so you need some sort of assistance, right? So you needed to take care of phase 1 and name the people who are in charge of making those financial and medical decisions for you. Then that's when those documents become really important because like a lot of POAs or power of attorney, whether it's a medical power of attorney or financial power of attorney, those things don't kick in. They're springing POAs. So they don't spring into effect until you've been deemed incapacitated by a medical professional. And that usually is written into the documents that for me to be deemed incapacitated, there has to be, a medical evaluation and it has to be signed off by, a physician as well as, another person of my naming or something like that, and so that's phase 2. Phase 3 is I'm no longer here. Okay. And who gets what and how do I make sure that it's fair, but not necessarily equal? So again, just to use an example, had a conversation with some clients the other day that were in. We did a Zoom meeting, a Teams meeting, whatever, a virtual meeting with the attorney that I referred them to because I was like, you know what? This is going to take a higher level of expertise than just a basic will.
Okay.
And the situation is because there's, family, because family, right? So, it's that,
Let alone money and family.
What's the Kansas song? Carry on my
wayward son.
Yeah. There's always one of those, right?
Oh.
And so it's like, how do I make it fair but not equal? Because hey, we've spent money on this one.
Oh,
like
doggy.
I like for this couple. I'm not giving away personal information. This is just general. Okay. But like, it was like 50 or 60,000 a year since he was like 14 years old, and he's like 40 or something like that, right? So. Like they've spent a boatload of money trying to help him with his problems. And it's like, you know what? It's not fair to have him get the same amount. Plus, if he got this money dropped in his lap, it would be a disaster. It would. I literally asked him, I'm like, guys, you don't have any guardrails in place right now. Something happened to both of you. He's going to get all this money dropped in his lap. What would that do him? And without batting an eye, they told me it'd kill him. Like for sure. So. While you're living and you have capacity, make good decisions.
Okay.
Make decisions so that when you lose your ability to, be autonomous and things like that, you need rely on the help of somebody else. You get the right person and not Nurse Ratched, right?
Yes.
And then final 3 is make sure that once you're gone, you have done things that will allow your family to stay together, and you don't have a situation where one sibling is harassing another constantly over, hey, I want more money, or hey, you know, this wasn't fair, or something like that. So communication is big. And really, estate planning, I boil it down to 3 questions: who, and what. Okay. Who's in charge while I'm alive? Who's in charge after I'm dead? Mm-hmm. And who gets what? What do they get? And that's the decisions you have to make, because if you don't make them, you're still making a decision. You're making a decision to allow the court process to decide, and it may be radically different than what you want. And it could be a situation where if you, like the couple I talked about, if they have their beneficiary designations to minors, minors cannot, like in the state of Nebraska, a minor cannot legally inherit some investment account or a brokerage account or any dollars. They can't handle that themselves. They have to be 19 years old in the state of Nebraska, I believe. So until they're 19, that means you're going to a court, you're going before a judge, petitioning to be appointed as a conservator. And the judge is going to have discretion on how big of a restriction they put on that account. And it could be that every time, like worst case scenario, every time you need a distribution, you have to go in front of a judge and request a distribution. The judge have to sign off on it. You have to take that to your financial professional or send it into the company.
Oh, golly.
Then their legal team reviews it. It's very expensive, very time consuming, very cumbersome. And it isn't necessary if you just take, you know, a few hours of your time to put your thoughts and your wishes down on paper and make it official. So that's when estate planning matters.
Okay, can you tell me the who, the what, where again? What is it? Comes down to 3 things.
Yeah, who's in charge while you're alive?
Okay.
Who's in charge after you're dead? What does everybody get?
All right. This is why you want to get the plan organized. 866-295-5146. Get your legacy in place. Legacy done right. You can get a report there, too, if you want to. 866-295-5146.
So Legacy Done Right is a report that we put together. StonebridgeLegacy.net, I believe.
Thank you. StonebridgeLegacy.net, yes. Very important set of facts that you can feed into that. But the bottom line is get an appointment. 866-295-5146. Now, if everything just was in a will, is that going to accomplish our who, and what?
I call that a myth bust, right? It's just a will. And I actually wrote this. Did you see my notes on my class?
I didn't. Yeah. No, I'm just following your brain, though.
Okay, so the question is, what's the real difference between a will and a full estate plan? And the truth is, the estate planning process starts long before a will is even drafted, right? So I say there's plenty of people who've spent good money on estate documents that have, no idea where they're at, what they say, or what they even want them to say. So I say estate planning is a process you engage with, not a product that you purchase. Say that again. Okay. Estate planning is a process you engage with, not a product you purchase. So you need to know what do you want to have happen, who gets what, how do we want them to receive it, frequency, amount, at what pace, right? And so just having a will just is like directions or arrows, right? It says, okay, this person gets this person gets this, and this person gets this. Now, it could say there's things you could do within a will, like you could draft it so, and again, I'm not an attorney, I can't draft your will, this isn't legal advice, but a lot of people, what they will do, what I've seen them do, is draft into a will maybe what's called a testamentary trust, okay? It's a trust that doesn't exist until the second surviving spouse, if they're married, passes away. Oh. And then a trust is created. We sometimes say that they're cheaper to set up, but they're more expensive to use because your assets will still pass through probate if you use a testamentary trust. But for like that young family I told you about, 34 and 32, that might be, again, I'm not an attorney, so I can't tell them, that might be an attractive route to go because, hey, I don't have to come out of pocket for as much to set up some trust that I might need to change later anyway. I've got flexibility that way. I just say, hey, if something happens to me, the beneficiary isn't my 5-year-old. Okay, it's the trustee of the testamentary trust created by the last will and testament of so-and-so, right? And so it's way more than just a will. Like, what do you want the will to say? And if you don't have a state-specific will, if it's not valid in the state you live in, if you just go the DIY route, but you don't think through, like, the implications, and you just name those individuals, if you say, oh, well, I just want everything to be controlled by my will, so I'm going to make beneficiary designations to my estate. Terrible, 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 terrible. Because like now I've made my retirement accounts a probate asset and I didn't need to. I could have avoided probate. Oh. The couple that was in the other day, again, saying that this is a process that you engage with, not a product that you purchase. If they purchased that will, they had no idea that the will would not have any impact whatsoever on what happened to their investment accounts, because their investment accounts are governed by beneficiary designation forms, and that will supersede anything that your will says. Your will could say, hey, my 401ks and my IRAs all go to charity, or they all go to my spouse. Mm-hmm. But if your will says something, or that could be in your will, if your beneficiary designation form says something different, sorry, like your wishes in your will meant nothing. So again, it's a process you have to engage with thoughtfully. It's not something you can purchase and set it and forget it.
More importantly, those designations on the beneficiary designations, even on bank accounts and things like that, if you're mad at somebody and maybe you're not married to that person anymore and the second wife comes in, she going to be mad if you don't get that stuff right.
Well, in like the state of Nebraska, if somebody gets divorced and they still have their ex-spouse listed as their beneficiary on their retirement account or life insurance or something like that, state of Nebraska law says no, the divorce will null and void that, and then it goes to like the next in line. But that's not how ERISA law works. ERISA is the 1974 Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which governs ERISA covered 401ks, some 403bs, things like that.
I see.
And so that law says no. Whoever's on that beneficiary designation form, that's who's getting the money. And we've seen so many cases like this. There was a gentleman who had his first wife listed.
Oh, dear.
And she passed away. So he updated it. He thought he did the right thing. He put his children on the beneficiary designation form. Later, he got remarried. Well, ERISA law says, hey, if you get remarried, your spouse, your new spouse, has to disclaim that her right, because she has a right, first right to refusal, so to speak, to receive those assets. He never did that, even though his statements that he received still said that his kids were beneficiaries. So he's like, no, I'm good. When he passed away, who do you think got his $1 million 401k?
The wife.
The new wife. And what does his kids get?
Nada.
Not a dang thing. So that's why this is such an important process, and working with somebody who understands how all 5 key areas interact with another: income, investment, tax, healthcare, legacy, because they all play an important role. But more importantly, your plan, that playbook, that proven process that I was talking about earlier, that's what you need to ensure that you have a strategy that you will stick with and you won't jump ship at the first sign of trouble, whether that's an economic type thing or a relational type thing, a falling out with a family member, the death of a family member, like all these things that life's consistent inconsistencies will continue to present at our doorstep. We need to be prepared for that, and that's what a plan is designed to handle and address.
Let's get that plan started. 866. Yes, 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. Call Stonebridge.
Did you ever think your retirement would be shared with our government? It's true. Your traditional 401k, IRA, pension, or similar retirement accounts are like a partnership with the IRS. Simply put, they want their tax dollars, and you have them. With our latest tax calculator, you can plug in your own numbers while sitting at home. To find out what your future tax liability could be, scan the QR code or go to stonebridgetaxbill.com.
Retirement Compass radio show with Stonebridge Wealth Systems, Tim Kulhanek in the Lincoln office. All right, Mr. Kulhanek, what about somebody who's planned on leaving a little something to the kids, but now their adult son just moved back in after a divorce? He brought his 10-year-old. They're happy to help, but this becomes long-term. I mean, how are they supposed to adjust their estate plan or budget to stay on track? It's kind of close to what we were talking about.
They have to, because I've seen this play out. I've got clients that will 100% run out of money soon because they allowed this to happen. They had a son that is still living with them. He's in his 30s, like late 30s, still lives in their basement, eats all their food, doesn't have a job.
Oh.
And then another son, he went through a nasty, divorce, needed help. She's still living in their house. He had to go find an apartment.
Oh, no.
Trying to make it as amicable as possible because there's kids involved, which just really makes it difficult. And so mom and dad, the bank of mom and dad opens back up and steps in. And I've told them for the last 3 years, I go, guys, you will run out of money if you keep doing this.
Right. You cannot keep doing this.
We got to do something about that. But it's your kid,
Yeah.
And so it's really, really difficult. So there's got to be I used the term guardrails earlier. There's got to be some guardrails and some parameters that are put into place that say, look, I love you. I'm going to do everything I can to help you. But the old, put your own mask on first. Like if you drown what good are you to those other people who you're worried about drowning? Throw them a life preserver, but don't go out there and just like go underwater and hold them up and try to hold your breath for as long as you can, because eventually you'll run out of air. And that's kind of what can happen in this scenario. So my advice in these situations is to say, look, here's what we can afford to do. Here's what we can do. Here's what we cannot do. So we're going to help you as much as we can. If it means short term, you need a place to stay, by all means. But we can't. I'm 70 years old. I'm 78 years old. I can't go back to work. Okay, so we'll help. If you need us to watch the little boy here, little girl here, we are here for it. Maybe I even step away from my volunteer work or my part-time job to help watch grandkids. So that way you can go out and you can earn a living and you can get a job and you don't have to pay for daycare. As a parent of 3, I know how expensive daycare is. I'm not paying it right now, not because of like a grandparent watching my kids, but because my wife stepped away from her career as a teacher because, so even though teachers make the big bucks, we made this giant sacrifice to say, you know what, even though you've been bringing home the bacon, Marley, I think it makes sense for you to stay home. Her entire paycheck and then some, it wouldn't have covered the cost of daycare for 3 kids.
Right.
So there's things you can do as a parent/grandparent to try to help in these scenarios. But again, if you sabotage your own plan, when they eventually do move out or when you eventually do run out of money, now you're both going like, what then? What then? Whose doorstep do you end up on then if you can't pay your, property tax bill?
It makes me sad as can be because it's so common. Grandparents are absorbing the cost of the kids and the grandkids. I know a guy who's taken in not only his son, but the 2 grandchildren.
Oh, yeah.
And between his, Social Security check and his wife's Social Security check, for heaven's sakes, that's hard to live on that.
I know.
All right. Call Stonebridge, truly, and you can iron this out. They can help you with some of the decisions and how to verbalize the discussion, et cetera. 866-295-5146. And better yet, provide you with actual facts and figures to present then back to the child. 866-295-5146. Look, this is how much money we spend. We can't just give it all to you. 866-295-5146. All right. How about somebody who's recently inherited $200,000 from a sibling, Mr. Kulhanek, and they don't want to just sit on it in a savings account, but they also don't want to take too much risk. They are 72 years old. What's a smart way to invest unexpected money like this when you're already retired yourself?
I'm going to assume it wasn't in a retirement account, right? It wasn't an IRA or 401k.
Doesn't say that. It
right?
just says $200,000.
Yeah. Well, they said save. So I'm just going to make that assumption.
All right.
And so, don't go to Warhorse. What's that?
We're talking cash, or we're assuming it's a 401k?
Yeah, I'm talking cash. I'm going to assume that it was after-tax dollars. So it's cash. Don't go to Prairie Band. They'll take it. Don't go to Warhorse. They'll take it. Don't go to the boat, basically, right?
Right.
So how should we invest it so we don't lose money safely? And it's more than just that. Like if you put that, let's say you take that $200,000, and let's say you made 5% in some sort of CD, which CDs aren't paying 5% anymore. But let's say in my fanciful world that they are, that $10,000 that I make in interest, I don't really make $10,000 because that's going to show up on my 1040 on line 2B as taxable interest. I'm going to pay tax on that, and I might lose 1% or 1.25% of that. So I might only make 3.75% net. And so, again, I'm just losing money safely. Now, depending on what CPI, or I should say inflation metric you look at, you might feel like you're still outpacing inflation. Oh, inflation's closer to 2%. Or, if you look at long-term, the producer price index, 2% looks kind of very unrealistic, like a joke, because it's been much higher, especially since 2020. We still have all this excess inflation that we haven't burned off compared to where the trend line was headed. And so we want to be safe. We want to be tax efficient. We need to have a balance between safety, income growth, and liquidity, so access to it if we want to be able to use it. So typically, I'm going to use, again, a balanced, comprehensive approach. I'm probably going to take a portion of that money And if I have debt, I'm going to look at paying it off depending on what the interest rate is. If I don't have a fully funded emergency fund, I'm going to fully fund that. If there's something that I've been meaning to get, like, if there's wires showing on my tires and I'm not driving a safe automobile, I'm on the belt, I'm probably going to go put new tires on.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, then I'm going to take any excess beyond that, and I'm going to put together a strategy that's tax efficient, that is not overly complex, because I don't like, sometimes efficiency is or complexity is the enemy of execution and efficiency. And so I'm probably going to use something that's straightforward, simple, consolidated, but also tax efficient. So whether that's, like, for us, we use a lot of structured notes. We have an entire investment model called Tax Keen that's specifically designed to be as tax efficient as possible, and can adjust and kind of be that chameleon type of strategy where it can morph into what you need it to be depending on what your risk profile is. So if you're really aggressive, great, but this person's not, be more conservative with that money. We can do that. Make sure that you're taking risk in the right type of bucket, that you're not buying a mutual fund that has a high turnover rate and then you're just paying capital gain distributions on money those are called phantom gains. So using the right tool for the job, being as tax efficient as possible, while being cognizant of the balance between safety, income growth, and liquidity.
Very juicy bit of information. I think that this is something to pay attention to, because so many people are going to be inheriting money from the baby boomers who have trillions in their accounts right now. A lot of people are going to receive money, maybe not from siblings, but it is going to transfer. So I hope somebody got something out of that. Call Stonebridge to help. 866-295-5146, 866-295-5146. All right, Mr. Kulhanek, they thought they were going to spend their golden years together, and now one of them is heading into memory care. Oh. The cost of monthly memory care is over $7,000. What's the best way to handle this emotionally and financially without draining every nickel from your savings?
How much did you say it was?
7,000.
That's really not. That wouldn't be bad. Like, was that $84,000 for the year or something? So, your Social Security is going to cover a portion of it. If there's a pension, that'll cover another chunk. Really, this is why planning is so important, and why you like, so many people think, I'll just self-insure. For a lot of people, if you have enough savings, self-insuring looks pretty attractive if you only need care for a really short period of time, right? So if this only lasts for a year or two, like, yeah, maybe self-insuring is doable. The thing that people often overlook when they do planning is they assume that, okay, well, if I go into a facility, then I need $84,000 a year. Well, but what about the community spouse? They still have a household to run, so they still have property taxes to pay, insurance to pay, utilities to pay, food to eat, fuel, all these different things. And then you have a life,
Yes.
And so you end up spending a whole lot more. Your bills don't get cut in half, right? Just like when somebody dies, the household expenses don't drop by half.
By half, no.
So I think it's important to consider what would happen if one of us needed assistance, and take that a step further. What would happen if one of us needed assistance for more than just a couple of years? The average duration, I think, for a male for a long-term care event is probably like between 2 and 2.5 years. Like 2.2 is the last number I saw. But for women, it's closer to 4. And so, when there's some very probably almost like biological and like sociological type reasons why that occurs, right? Women tend to be more caretaker, empathetic.
Yes.
They live longer. They tend to take care of the men as much as they can before a man would end up in, a long-term care assistance type of facility or event. So for those reasons, having a plan in place ahead of time is important, but also understanding that a lot of people have been priced out of your traditional long-term care models. So looking at a hybrid approach, there was a couple in the other day. She's going to be retiring from education. He'll be retiring soon as well. They have great Social Security, great pension, but they want to earmark money for long-term care in case they need it for more than a couple years. And because of their age and health status, they're like, we won't qualify for like traditional long-term care. So we'll
That's
pivot
fine.
and we'll say,
Yeah.
okay, they're planning on selling a property. We're going to use that. We're going to earmark that money for long-term care needs if they need it. But what we'll do, in case they need it for longer than anticipated, is we'll probably use like a qualified long-term care, tax-qualified long-term care annuity.
Okay.
Which means basically they'll take the dollar amount and potentially triple it. So if it was like $150,000, they might have, whether it be like $450,000 that they could use for long-term care, and it would all come out tax-free because it's a qualified long-term care annuity. So in that example, if they die 30 years from now peacefully in their sleep, having never needed any sort of assistance, they never paid for this for something they hope they never used, because that money would just go to their beneficiaries. If they do need long-term care, they'll have money. That money's been set aside, so that way the community spouse doesn't have to make massive sacrifices, change their lifestyle, sell their own home, things like that.
Right.
Once you're in that, like if this is a situation, well, now I'm there, what do I do? Well, your options are limited. You know, we're going to have to take a step back and look to see, well, you know, I've got this situation I'm working on right now. What do we do to extend the longevity of your money? So, hey, if these are out-of-pocket costs for healthcare, you're going to be able to itemize on Schedule A, and you'll have these big deductions. So in a year, you have these massive deductions. If we could pay for that care with after-tax money,
I see.
maybe we can then do a big Roth conversion in that year, because we had this massive deduction that's going to offset the tax impact of doing the conversion.
I see.
And so do this, like last year I did like a $200,000 conversion, essentially at no cost from a tax perspective. And then later on, if that person that's in the facility passes away and you become a single filer, your money goes probably 25 or 30% further than it would have had we not done that. So you're making the most of the situation based on the conditions on the ground.
Very good. Use this number, 866-295-5146. Call Stonebridge, 866-295-5146. Tim, great show.
Thanks. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
was
See you next
wonderful.
time.
Later.
Here's our music.